Hi, I'm Alan Hedblum. Welcome to our show, a place to feel like you belong. During our conversation, you will notice words and phrases appearing at the bottom of the screen. After our dialogue, stay tuned for a follow-up segment called What'd You Say?, where we will explain some of the difficult slang and cultural concepts that you heard. A complete list will be given on our website for the conversation with today's date. For now, I'd like to welcome today's guest, Sook Wilkinson. Sook is a clinical psychologist, retired. She's an author and an active member of the Michigan Asian Pacific American Affairs Commission. Sook, welcome to Feel Like You Belong.
Thank you.
So you grew up in South Korea. You went to school there and all the way up through college, but then you came to the United States. Why did you do that?
Well, two reasons. Number one, I had a job. I had a job to come to the U.S. to teach Korean language to the Peace Corps trainees, because way back then, Korea had a Peace Corps group coming in from the U.S. And the second reason, and also the main reason why I stayed on after that job, was that I really wanted to have an opportunity to advance my education and experience life in the United States.
Okay, so what did your parents think about you going off and doing this?
Well, they were actually very proud at first that I was able to attain that kind of opportunity, but they were very disappointed that I wasn't coming back.
And especially when kids go out and get independent, get new things that they learn, fall in love, in your case, then
Right.
it's hard to come
Yeah.
back. And now, in fact, you've got three siblings, one living in the U.S. and two still back in Korea.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
How does that work for families and especially for parents?
Well, you know, it's very, very hard. But we work really hard at keeping the family together. Now, when I first came, it was in 1970, and way back then, we didn't have Skype, we didn't have iPhone. Making a phone call, international phone call, cost so much, I couldn't afford to make such calls. But now, I mean, I can talk to them every day just for a couple bucks, or we can do FaceTime, costing nothing. And in fact, this weekend, I'm going to host 14 of my family members, one sister and her husband and her two children and their children, and our daughter and granddaughter. So that's a mini family reunion.
Fantastic.
And yeah.
So what will be the language of reunion?
Language of reunion would be English and Korean, because some only speak Korean, some only speak English, and some speak both. So we'll go back and forth.
Okay, great. So you've had a really interesting career. You worked for the Peace Corps, you've also worked for the United Nations, and then you got a master's degree in special education. You went on and did your doctorate in psychology. You've worked in hospitals and clinics, so you've done a lot of really interesting things. Partway along through all of this training and this experience, you decided to devote your attention to international adoption issues. Can you tell us about that?
Sure. When I was working on my doctorate, one of the first things my advisor told me was to find a topic that I felt passionately about, because, you know, as you know, the doctoral process is a long process.
Excruciating.
Yes, and he said, you have to have passion in that topic to sustain you during that whole time. So I was searching for a topic, and then one day I had this aha moment, and it was at a workshop or seminar for the adoptive parents of Korean children. And this one father approached me. I was one of the speakers, and he came up and asked me a very puzzling question, which ultimately became my question for the research. And he said he and his wife adopted a child from Korea, a son, and the father was so committed to helping the child maintain his Korean heritage by pointing out any news on TV or in magazines or newspapers. The father would cut out any newspaper articles, you know, for the child. And every time the father approached the child with that, the child ran away in the opposite direction. The father was so puzzled, and asked me if I had any, thoughts on that. And I had some guesses, but I thought, I really would like to know. I really would like to know what's going on with that child.
So what was your research question?
Well, my research question was really to find out what's going on inside. It was a phenomenological research done in using qualitative research methodology, which meant that I was really looking inside of the children through play therapy as a technique, and learned a lot about what was going on in their little mind.
So what was the group of children? What was the size of the children?
The size was 7 children.
Okay.
I worked with them for over a year on a weekly basis. Yeah.
So you got to know 7 kids really well.
Very well. Yeah, very well. In fact, one of them, I remember, soon after we started working, his mother called me and said, "Oh, I have to tell you the story." He came home, he was crying, he was really distressed. And I asked him, what's going on? And the boy said he was afraid to be with me in the play therapy room because he was convinced that I was going to take him back to Korea, that I had a plane waiting.
Oh my goodness.
That there was another door that I could take him out through without his parents knowing about it.
Asian kidnapper.
Yeah, and just take him back to Korea. And it was a really great opportunity for the parents to start understanding the fear and the anxiety, some of these children actually experience. And it was a really great learning experience for me as well.
Yeah. So what are the typical concerns of American, so Caucasian parents who adopt Korean kids?
Well, also through my clinical experience, because as a psychologist, I have done a lot of work with the parents of these adopted children. In the first phase, a lot of the parents are still anxious. This is their first time parenting, and we all were first time parents, and you remember how anxious we were.
Sure. Am I going to break this child?
Exactly. And the same thing with these adoptive parents. But what's even what makes it even a little more challenging is emotionally. They're still trying to attach with the child, and sometimes the child doesn't respond the way you expect them to. You hope that they would.
Is that a variable also of age? In other words, older children are more resistant?
Not necessarily. I think some older children, they attach. I think it really has more to do with the experience of the child in the first 6 months of their lives.
Okay.
If they were lying down in a crib at an orphanage with nobody paying attention to them, that really leaves a critical mark.
It's more emotional distance
in their ability to attach. Yeah. So even if it's not a parent, when there is a caregiver and they can forge a relationship with that caregiver, that makes a huge difference. Yeah.
Well, I should point out to our viewers that you have actually published 2 books on the topic, and so I'd like to show those to our viewers here. And these are also available online on Amazon, I saw. So. So thank you for bringing those in.
You're welcome.
So what is maybe the most profound thing that you learned from doing this research?
About the children?
About the children,
yeah.
the adoptees.
Yeah. Well, number one, the issues that come up are cyclical.
Okay.
So by the time they go into preschool, away from home, that's when they begin to realize that they look different from their parents.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
And they start asking questions, where did I come from, and why do they not keep me, and who are my parents, in a different world, in a different country. And at that point, these kids are not asking for, are not expecting a real profound philosophical answer about that. And these questions will resurface later on when they are teenagers. And at that point, they are looking for more in-depth kind of answers and responses. And then as a young adult, it resurfaces again.
So part of the answer, and I think that's always in parenting, judging the age of the child and how much information at what level they're just
Right.
able to accept.
Exactly.
And to understand.
Exactly.
Sure.
Yeah, and the questions about, where do I come from and where are my quote unquote parents, referring to birth parents, these questions come up at the most inopportune time and place. So, you think, what do I say? In the company of other people or at a party.
Sure.
Yeah, but those things do happen.
Kids have a way of doing that to
Yes.
us, don't they? Sure. Our time is drawing short, but I'd like to conclude with talking a little bit about your work with the commission, the state commission, because you have been traveling to Lansing and meeting with Asian Pacific Islander Americans for the last many years. Why is this advocacy work important?
Yeah, well, in the state of Michigan, the Asian Americans and Pacific Islander population has really grown. In fact, it's the fastest growing ethnic group in the state of Michigan. And now it's approaching, more than 4% of the entire population. And also the businesses owned by Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders in the state of Michigan have grown exponentially. In fact, I learned that there are over 16,000 such businesses in the state of Michigan.
Wow.
And these businesses create over about 45,000 jobs. And the annual economic impact on the state, the Michigan's economy is $11.5 billion.
Okay.
So it's very important that we find ways to support these businesses. And also another group that the commission has been working with and has been supporting is the group of international students.
Okay.
Yeah, the three countries who send the most number of international students to the United States are China, India, and South Korea.
Fantastic.
And
Wow.
in the state of Michigan, we have over 24,000 students.
That's significant.
Yeah, coming from these Asian countries. And the contribution that they make to our economy is $650 million. I mean, that's just a lot of contribution that they're making, through their tuition, through their life and traveling and so on. Absolutely.
Sure.
And these, create jobs. So it's really important for us to find a way to give voice to their concerns and issues and
Sure.
find ways to support them better by connecting them to the state government. And, a few years ago, there was a question about who is eligible to get a driver's license in the state of Michigan. And there was some confusion about that. And some of the international students and some of the executives of these businesses who were sent here from their home countries realized that they could not get driver's license because they didn't have a social security number.
And if you're going to participate in a state, both for business or for education, you need to get yourself around.
Absolutely.
I think if we've got these numbers here, then it's clear that there's a case that we need to support them.
That's
we
right.
will be putting up the website for your commission on our show, so
Great.
that people can read more about that.
Great.
And the time has absolutely flown by, so we need to conclude. But I want to thank you for coming and spending time with us today. And we will be coming back shortly for our follow-up segment on Would You Say? Way back then means in that very distant time, many years ago. Sook, who is recently retired, was referring to her earliest days in the United States as a college student. Aha moment is a moment when you suddenly realize something new or surprising happened and you say, aha. Can you guess how many languages there are in the world? Is it A, B,
C, or D? If you guessed D, you're right. World linguists estimate there are close to 7,000 languages spoken across the globe. However, approximately half of those tongues could become extinct by the next century. There are many reasons that a language dies out. Migration, globalization, and internet contact all move people out of their original locations through either physical movement or communication. Extinction also comes about through social and political oppression and injustice. Should we care if another language dies? What does it mean to speakers of Chinese, English, or Spanish, the world's 3 largest languages? Perhaps to them, the death of a small, obscure language is no big deal. However, there are stories and knowledge wrapped up in the languages of all humans. And when we lose that, we lose the insights of one more lens on life. The Endangered Languages Project is looking to document as many languages as possible so that these cultures, traditions, and experience are not lost forever. This project has created a website for people to find and share comprehensive information about the over 3,000 endangered languages of the world. If you would like to learn more about the ELP, visit the What's Up section of our website, where we will share a short video about the project. Many times, advertisers will try to use humor to make us like their products. One American insurance company named Geico has a series of funny commercials. They finish with a line comparing how happy their customers will be. In this case, their customers will be as happy as a camel on Wednesday. Watch this commercial and see if you know why it's funny.
Uh-oh, guess what day it is? Guess what day it is? Huh? Anybody? Julie, hey, guess what day it is? Oh, come on, I know you can hear me. Mike. What day is it, Mike? Leslie, guess what today is?
It's hump day.
Woo-woo!
Ronnie, how happy are folks who save hundreds of dollars switching to Geico? I'd say happier than a camel on Wednesday.
Hump day!
Get happy.
Yeah!
Get Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more.
If you don't know why Americans are laughing at this, you can find an explanation in the What'd You Say section of our website.